Okay, you're now live. Or, well, hang on, not yet. Now you are.
Good. I think we are. Yes, looks like we are live. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our town hall event this evening. My name is Marcy Hausman. I will be serving as your host, and I really appreciate the opportunity to engage with Chris Harding, our first candidate of the evening. And for those who are viewing, thank you for taking the time to visit with us, whether you're watching this live or perhaps you're watching it later. And either way, we appreciate you setting aside some time to join us for this town hall and get to know Chris and the county auditor role. Before we jump right in and have Chris introduce himself, again, he is running for county auditor. I want to welcome those who are joining us via Facebook, YouTube, and encourage you to submit questions for Chris using the comment feature. So I will be monitoring both of those platforms throughout this town hall, looking for questions, and then feeding those to Chris, who is eager to have time to chat and share both his thoughts on his role as county auditor, as well as answering your questions. So again, just thank you to all of you who've joined us this evening. And if you are watching via our Facebook or YouTube stream, please do take some time to submit some questions. And then one final note to share with you, we want to thank all of those who've contributed to our county party. It is those contributions that make these town halls possible. It gives our candidates an opportunity to speak more frequently with more voters, and every donation of any amount matters. So for those who have already donated, thank you. It is your contributions that have made these town halls possible. If you've not yet donated, we would very much appreciate that support so we can continue offering town halls in the future. So please visit our website, saltlakecounty.gop.com, and that's SLCo GOP.com. And we appreciate all that you do to support our efforts in the county races. And then final reminder, if you're, again, whether you're watching live or afterward, joining us live or watching afterwards, please be sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you can hear about our upcoming town halls. And with that, Chris, I want to turn it over to you. We'll get started. Just introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit about the county auditor role and what you think is important for us to know about why you were seeking, to continue being the auditor.
You bet. Thanks, Marcy. I appreciate it. And thanks to all those who are watching this live or who are watching it afterwards. So I graduated from the University of Utah in 2006 with a bachelor's in accounting and started working for some local CPA firms while I got my MBA through Weber. And then I sat for and passed the CPA exam and kind of, it was some summer holiday. It was like the 4th of July, and my dad and my brother were like, hey, you should come over for a barbecue. And I'm like, I can't, I'm working. So I made the jump over to the federal sector because they're like, you need to have more of a life. So I spent the next 7.5 years with the Defense Contract Audit Agency, got some more certifications, the Certified Internal Auditor and Certified Fraud Examiner. And that was a lot of fun working for the DCAA. I got the chance to go audit in Iraq for 6 months, then Israel for 2 years. That was really nice because I got to take my family. Then I came home and spent a couple of years with their sister agency, the Defense Contract Management Agency. And then I took a job out at Dugway Proving Grounds as their Director of Internal Review and Compliance, kind of like their internal auditor. But the commute, that killed me. So after a couple of years there, I was at my prior place of employment, and that was the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. And people were always like, what do you do? And I'd explain it to them. And it was just easier to say, well, I audit the IRS. And that made it a lot easier for them. And they were like, yeah, go get the IRS. So it was November of last year, actually, when my predecessor resigned. He took another job somewhere in the state. And I started researching him and some of the other past auditors and kind of what they do. I started what I term stalking county employees on LinkedIn and sending them messages out of the blue and trying to get in contact with them. And the more I looked at stuff, looked at their audits, I just thought, wow, I could do this. I think their audits were intriguing. As being a federal auditor, when you do your audits, you send them off to some nebulous, and a lot of the times you don't get to see the results. And for the last few years, I'd also been doing audits on the side for local school districts or cities sometimes. And it was so neat to see my audit findings make changes in those entities. So I thought, yeah, I should bring this home to Salt Lake County where I live. I've got a good understanding of the profession, and I know what's going on. So as we approached, I kind of had to talk my wife into letting me run, because her dad had actually run for the county auditor back in like the 90s, and it was not a very pleasant experience for him. He's like, oh, the politics of everything. And so I convinced her. I said, look, if you let me drop a little money on like the website and stuff, I was like, that'll be my Christmas present. And she's like, okay, I'll let you do that. So as I got going, something that really got me passionate about this is that I think my predecessors were well-meaning, but as I noticed in looking at their audits, they were not doing the audits as I was used to as a federal employee in accordance with GAGAS. And why that's important is just like, I mean, I guess the only way to explain it, because if the police didn't follow, I guess, certain guidelines, and you see on like the movies where somebody might have planted some evidence, those guys are obviously not following the law. Well, auditors, we have to follow certain guidelines. As we perform an audit, we have to engage the auditee. We have to send them a engagement letter and inform them. And as we go throughout the audit phase, our findings have to be documented in such a way that somebody else could come along behind us and reach the same conclusions. If we go in and say, hey, this entity is, maybe there's some fraud, waste, and abuse there, if push comes to shove, we have to be able to show that. We have to be able to support and prove it through our audit reports, through our findings. And when folks aren't following a standard, that requirement isn't there. Folks could go in and just willy-nilly look at stuff. And here's the thing with new auditors, you see it all the time. They think they have found some smoking gun. And oftentimes, sometimes and a brand new auditor does find a smoking gun, but I would say like 9 times out of 10, it's just that the auditor didn't get a good understanding of what was going on. They found something and then they stopped right there and they wrote up a report. Oftentimes you find something that doesn't make sense, but then you ask management, you ask the accountant, and they'll explain, oh, well, in this circumstance, we do this, or maybe during this month, we don't close the books at this time. And it can be very technical. We often, auditors, we're only experts at auditing. And that's one of the things that attracted me to it is with the Defense Contract Audit Agency, I got to audit the space industry, the rockets. I got to look at aerospace. In Israel, we got to go to a factory where they manufactured the reactive armor, where like if an IED or a rocket is shot at a vehicle, it will detect that and shoot something to counteract it, so it doesn't even get close to the vehicle. And it's interesting for an auditor who normally spends all their day inside writing reports and crunching numbers. So as I saw that the standards weren't necessarily being followed, it became more apparent after I won the election. And I came in, we have a great group of auditors, and as I was kind of assessing where things were at, I was asking, how do we do on continuing professional education? Auditors are just like other professions, engineers or doctors or lawyers. They need to get certain amount of continuing professional education each year to make sure they're up on their skills and they're not getting stagnant. And the consensus was We have done a little bit of CPE here and there, but for the most part, we don't really do it. I said, well, oh, that's interesting. How do you pass your peer review? And they said, well, what's a peer
What peer
review?
review?
And that kind of, okay, brought me down to earth. And the peer review, for those of you who don't know, or, maybe I need to clap and wake some of you up who might have dozed off. A peer review is where, folks will always say, especially when you're auditing them, they'll kind of get frustrated and they'll be like, well, who audits you? Who audits the auditor? And a peer review is so important because if an auditor isn't following the rules, this is kind of a safeguard where the standards say somebody from outside your audit shop that has no correlation, no relation to anybody or the work will come in and they kind of take a sample of all your completed audits. And then they in detail go through them and look at them, see if you're following the standards. There's a whole checklist and criteria. They do interviews with the the auditors who perform the audits. They talk to management. They comb through the work papers and then they assess. Did you perform your audits in accordance with the generally accepted governmental auditing standards? And if you haven't, that becomes part of your peer review letter, and it is posted generally to the entity's website, and it is a black eye if you get that. But Salt Lake County has never had any of that. We are currently, I would say, enrolled in the Association of Local Government Auditors peer review program. I was up there just a week and a half ago in Seattle doing a peer review for the Seattle OIG. They're the audit entity that looks just at the Seattle Police Department, and participating in that. Salt Lake County is scheduled to have our first ever peer review in around September of October of 2023. So we are really excited for that. Our auditors are meeting their CPE requirements. We're increasing the staffing in our office, and we are just doing a great job. It's like everywhere we could close our eyes and throw a dart at a dartboard of the county, and our auditors are finding great recommendations. I feel like we're working great with management and the council. When we have findings, we try and present them early, as we're not waiting till the audit report's out, but working with management early on to identify problems and help them understand why they're problems. And then we don't just issue the reports and hope that the council or management look at it. We get on the council schedule and we report these audits and try and help them also understand where the errors were and the benefits of our audit report and the work we've done, and why the normal regular person should care about this is plenty of people were feisty, I guess, if you would say, when our office sent out the notice of valuation. That's another thing. So the auditor's office audits, but then the other half of our work is we've got a group of folks who monitor the property taxes and calculate them and each year they send out a notification to kind of tell residents of the county, hey, here's your taxing authorities. Here's what it was last year. Here's what, for those that are going to raise their taxes, here's who is raising them. And then where their truth and taxation meetings are going to be held so that folks can go and voice their support. And let me tell you, there are a lot of passionate Salt Lake County residents who were not very happy about their taxes being raised. And I hear you. But once they're raised and you've paid them, that's not where your passion should end. You should care once you have cut that check, or your bank has cut that check to the county and sent it off. You should want to know that money is getting well spent. And the county has a budget of about $1.6 billion. That's an amazing amount of money. And granted, there are some pass-throughs with the county and the state. So it's not quite 1.6, it's a little bit lower, but it's above $1 billion. And if I'm going to pay several $1,000s a year to an entity, I want to know that the folks who are in charge of protecting that money, who are in charge of spending it, that they're doing it wisely. And here's my pitch for why you should want a good auditor. The auditor is the only one who one has the authority to poke their nose in everybody's business. We're not the only one there. The mayor and the council also have the authority, but we are the only ones with the skill, the time, and the manpower to do it. And quite frankly, we are the only ones that do it. No, the mayor's office and the county council, they don't issue audit reports, but we are constantly issuing audit reports. Sometimes multiple audits in a month we'll issue. And we do a risk assessment each year. We try and see where the most money is being spent, where the highest risks are. And we go in and plan this audit, but we don't just work within the auditor bubble. We want to reach out to the council. We want to reach out to the mayor's office and also to the managers and those who are charged with governance throughout the county and solicit their feedback. Hey, are you guys noticing anything weird? Is there some audit leads we should look at? And we even want to hear from the public. We actually just worked with the county council to get the first ever fraud hotline policy issued for Salt Lake County. We've had a fraud hotline, but we haven't really been able to publicize it because we didn't have a policy established that really had the backing of the council. October 11th, that was passed unanimously. All 9 of the council members voted and approved it. It was signed on the 11th, and it is active. And we are gonna run with that and publicize our fraud hotline. The reason is the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. They say that entities that have a fraud hotline, if and when fraud is found, just by having a hotline, statistically, that the fraud amounts half at entities with the hotline versus those without a hotline. And then they're also detected much earlier. The average is like 12 months of fraud goes undetected versus 18 months at an entity that doesn't have a fraud hotline. I apologize, I'm just rambling.
Fantastic.
So that's, I am passionate about auditing. If you could ask my family, my wife, when she needs help going to sleep, she just says, tell me about your day and I'll get into it in a few minutes, and she's out. So
I know, actually, I don't know if you noticed, I was taking notes, because I came to tonight's town hall, not only as the host, but I came from a very curious place. I've heard you speak a few places, and you were limited to just, a couple of minutes. And so I was very curious to learn more, because I could tell you were passionate about what you do, but I needed to know more about what it was you did or that you do. So I thought it was fantastic. I wrote a few things down that I'd love to have you elaborate on a little bit, just because my own profession leads me to ask some of these questions. But before I ask a few of my questions that kind of were inspired by what you just shared, I do want to remind those who've joined us again, YouTube or Facebook, please use the comment section to submit questions for Chris. We want to make sure you have an opportunity to pick his brain as much as I am. But I'm going to jump right in, Chris, and ask you to elaborate on a few things, and then I'll keep monitoring our chat over here. So in my professional world, I work in school improvement and partner with schools, districts, states across the West to really analyze. I'm going to try to use auditor language, but I'm not sure I'll be successful. But really analyze what we are doing and determine if the investments being made are yielding the desired outcomes for students. And so I've done that work both as a principal and a consultant, and in my current role, I work specifically with literacy. And so I was very struck by this, what seems to be a culture of continuous improvement that you have brought to the auditor's office. And because you mentioned, my evidence for that is you mentioned the peer review and the hotline. And those were not in place prior to your leadership. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's right. They've never had a peer review. This is the first fraud hotline that has ever been in policy in Salt Lake County. And there, I mean, there's big things that kind of violate the Auditor 101, not to hijack your question, but like another thing is that even in our state statutes, there is a loophole for auditing that is, you could drive a dump truck through. Like Auditing 101 says, the auditor has to be independent from the entity in which they audit. This kind of goes back to, if you remember in the early 2000s, like Enron, WorldCom, Tyco, all these things that just exploded, and what it brought down some of the most prominent auditing and accounting firms like Arthur Andersen. And what they found is that the auditor was a lot of times they had been their clients, like Enron they had been their clients for like 20 or 30 years. The accountants and the auditors, they were providing financial services for their auditees and then going in and auditing them. So they were essentially auditing their own work. They were familiar. Yeah. And it was kind of this, like, auditors, our phrase is trust with verification. And it was all trust with no outside verification. If I started selling things to you and I was like, hey, these are the greatest widgets on earth, they do everything, and you found out that my brother or my parent made the widgets, you would be able to tell that, okay, he's not really biased. Is this really the best whatever? And it's the same way with auditing. And one of the Auditing 101 violations that, unfortunately, based on a state statute, is that for certain audits, for performance audits, it states that the county council or the county executive will, they need to give essentially permission to perform these types of audits, and they are supposed to supervise and manage them. Well, think about it like this. If we get a fraud hotline tip that says, hey, you need to go poke around in the county council's business or the mayor's, and this type of an audit, we have to get their permission to look at, and they get to set the scope. How likely is it that if somebody has done something nefarious, that they're going to say, oh yeah, come on in. Yeah, you can do this audit. But if the auditor, and so we're working with legislatures like Jordan Tusher and Senator Bramble to change that legislation and get it back to where it needs to be. I apologize.
Oh no, that's
hijacking.
again, back to my statement, culture of continuous improvement.
Yeah.
I love everything you shared, because you're having an eye towards, all right, so let's honor what's been done that's worked well, and let's evaluate where there are opportunities to improve. And the why that I hear you saying loud and clear, the why for that improvement is to ensure that taxpayers are getting what they paid for. If,
yep.
To your point earlier, if I am writing a check, or whatever that looks like, to pay my taxes to Salt Lake County, to hear your level of expertise, and not only your level of expertise, you're not sitting back on your laurels going, yeah, I know what I'm doing. You are building a team that is constantly pursuing continuous improvement. And the evidence you provided for that tonight speaks volumes. So anyone who's watching should be like, all right, we are in good hands, because Chris, even though he's already put in motion some good things, he will not rest. There will always be this drive for Chris to continue to push everyone in the auditor's department to excel. And what's working, what's not working, and how do we fix what's not working? How do we ensure that everything we are doing maximizes the taxpayer investment? I just love it.
Yeah. And if I could just add one more little plug.
Absolutely.
Not only do we want to improve our office, but I would say 99.99% of the time at meet and greets, even employees in the county, I get introduced to them. They come up to talk to us, and their number one question is, what does the auditor do? We want to make sure that the information we have, the insights into the county, people can understand that. And one of the things we've done is, you know, someone who's a county council member or in management, it's part of their job to read our audit reports, to go through them and get the nitty gritties. But the regular Joe Schmo, citizen of Salt Lake County, they have an investment in the county, but they might not have time or the wherewithal to read a 40 to 50 page, somewhat dry audit report at times. And another thing that we've implemented is if you go to our website, slco.org/auditor, and read our reports, the last few of them, what we're trying to implement is a quick little 3 to 5 minute YouTube video that summarizes and says, here's some of the major findings we've had, here's why it applies to you, and here's where it's a risk and why we feel that this is an audit finding. It allows the person who maybe doesn't have a finance or auditing background to still get a good grasp. And if they want to, they can come and participate in a county council meeting and feel like they're informed and have the information to talk with those charged with governance in the community about stuff that they feel like affects them. So
I think I've checked one last time for questions. I do not see any questions waiting for us in the Zoom chat. You must have just like taught everyone so well that there are no questions.
Guy off.
No, it was fantastic. And you really truly helped me understand the value I get as a taxpayer from the hard work you do, and that you are continually striving for greater value through continuous improvement. So I appreciate the time you spent with us tonight, Chris. Thank you. And thank you for your willingness to run and continue to serve. As an elected official, I'm on the Sandy City Council. I know how hard that campaign season is. And I just appreciate you. I appreciate your family because they make the sacrifice as well. We are cheering you on, and we appreciate you spending some time with us tonight.
Thank you, Marcy. I sure appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
All right. We are going to move into our next town hall. There we are. Hello, Gerald. Oh, I think you're on mute.
There we go.
There we go.
Not better.
That's great. Welcome. Thank
Yes.
you for waiting patiently as we finished our previous town hall. We are ready to jump right into yours. But before I get you talking, I'm just going to take a moment to kind of check in with our virtual audience and introduce myself, and then give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. But I am Marcy Hausman. I am tonight's host for our series of town halls, and I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate all of those who are joining. Mr. Burt, I appreciate you joining us as well and carving out some time to talk to constituents this evening. I do have just a few announcements as we get kicked off here that I do want to share with everyone. Let me pull up my notes here. So for those who are joining Facebook and YouTube, here as we start our town hall, I want to invite you to share your comments through the comment feature, whatever platform you are using. We appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening, and would love to have you add to the conversation by submitting some of your own comments. So I will be kind of keeping an eye on our YouTube chat, on our Facebook chat, and then offering those questions to Gerald this evening as we move forward with our conversation. So as I mentioned, we have Gerald Burt tonight, who is running for House. I'm going to give him a moment to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his candidacy. But I want to start our town hall by thanking all of those who donated to our county party. Those donations and contributions have made it possible to offer these town halls, to give our candidates an opportunity to speak and share their message as many times as they can. So if you've not yet donated, we invite you to go to our website, and that's saltlakecountygop.com, SLCo.gop.com, and make a donation. We really appreciate those donations, and they will help us continue to offer these town halls. And as a reminder, for those who are either watching live with us or will be watching this at some other point in time, please be sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you can hear about future events that we will be offering. All right, so with that bit of an introduction, I just want to invite you, Gerald, to tell us a little bit about yourself, your race, and why you're running.
Okay. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity. Just an introduction, I was born in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And we moved down here. I attended Brigham Young University, went to Olympus High, attended University of Utah too. So I understand that's a forgivable sin. But I enjoyed my time at both universities, loved them both. Met my wife, Janet Paulson, persuaded her to marry me. And we eventually moved to the Canyon Rim community to be closer to our parents. And we raised 6 kids, and we live right next to the Harley's Historical Nature Park. In fact, we live right on the gully there. And that is one of my important issues that brought me to wanting to run, is I think we need more local control over all our issues, the parks, the open areas, the gravel pit that's proposed in Harley's Canyon, and the gondola, which they're proceeding right now. And I think it's important. One of the most important things I can stress is citizen involvement there. And in my professional life, I've worked on affordable housing, multifamily. So I've had some experience in that, and that is a prickly issue, affordable housing. It's very difficult to get all the parties together on that. And so with that, I'll just turn that introduction back to you, and you can tell me what you'd like to ask me.
Well, what a great introduction. I appreciate that. And you're right. We can celebrate both of those great football teams. I'm a BYU graduate, as is my husband, and we've got BYU kids, but my youngest is a freshman at the University of Utah. So there you go.
Yeah, my oldest graduated from the University of Utah. So yeah.
Both great schools. I just happen to, be loyal blue, but that's okay. Well, thank you for that introduction. So I'm going to jump into some questions that we've got here. Again, I'm going to monitor the chat in both our our YouTube streaming and our Facebook streaming, and pull in some of those questions. But while we're waiting for some of those questions to be submitted, let's just kind of jump right in on some questions about, if you were able to be elected and serve in the House, what would your service look like? So that's kind of what we're going to focus on first. So in your service, upcoming, service, or as you've observed those who've been serving in the state legislature, what specific bills have you appreciated? And what bills would you support moving forward if you were in the legislature that protected families?
Well, I think it's very important to have full control in our schools for the families. We have faith issues that we need to have taught, and we need to be careful and concerned about that. And I don't appreciate some of the ideologies that are in our grade schools, K through 12, really. And I think we need to get those under control. And if they have good things going, I think women only in women's sports, I think that's a great thing. I think we need to have the freedom to express ourselves. I'm not sure about pronouns. I don't use them, and I don't think I need to be obligated to use them, but I know we need to respect all people. But I think we need not influence our youth too much to ideology. We need to introduce them to civics, morals, and issues of faith if we want to, and that whatever faith that is, but generally a faith in God is taught in the Constitution. So I love the way our state promotes free markets and commerce. So that's in a nutshell. And lowering taxes, keeping them low, although that's kind of hard to judge.
Well, that actually kind of connects to the next question I have here. So if you want to elaborate a little bit further on how you would weigh in on tax policy as a member of the legislature, and connect that perhaps to inflation, because that was my next question. Inflation is clearly hurting many Utahns. And what would you do as a member of the state legislature to address inflation?
Well, I think first we need to blame the issue on our federal government and on our different countries, London, United States being most prominent. We have been creating inflation for 30 to 40 years. Only governments create inflation, but we've made it possible. We voted them in, we let them stay in, and our leaders on both parties have done all they could to let this happen. And so I think we need to first find out, not be complacent, identify those people who will fight those inflationary issues and try to get them back in control. And I don't even know if we need the Federal Reserve. You can talk all night about that and release all sorts of documents on it, but monetary and fiscal under control at the federal level. Here statewide, we should continue promoting free markets and commerce. We need to emphasize reduced government and well-paying jobs through our own sound policies. And then all the issues that are coming up, homelessness, illegal immigration, crime, these are expensive. And sometimes I think that the cities don't attack this as they should. They switch. I have an apartment in downtown Salt Lake, apartment complex. The homeless people come in, you move them out, the city takes them out. One time they had 3 dump trucks, a front end loader, 3 cop cars, and about 10 helpers. Now that's not cheap. They've done that 2 or 3 different times and they just keep coming back. We're not addressing the root causes of problems. So that's that issue. One thing I think we can do, and I think we should do, as some other states done, is they've limited the sales of single family homes to foreign entities, corporations, hedge funds. I think we should do that. I think we should have some law, look at a law and legislation to limit those purchases to 5 homes. These hedge funds and others are coming in and buying subdivisions at a time, and they don't even look at the properties. They don't even get them appraised many times. One of my neighbors sells real estate and he says they just come in, they buy them, they don't rent them, they hold them. They don't even look at them. So that is driving prices up, I think, as much as anything. Again, it goes back to our government, its fiscal and monetary policy. So I think we need to control that. One area I'd like to see more work on is we have a 10-year energy plan that was updated in 2014 in the state of Utah. I think we need to visit that again, make sure we can control that, and only have our base load on the energy items that we have, whether that's coal or other powers. When we start looking at renewables, windmills and solar panels, they must not infringe on our base load that we depend on. As long as they don't infringe on that base load, I'm okay with renewals. I think we need to have all of them, but we need to have our continuous base load to be stable. So that's basically it. That's, I think, some areas where we can start, but you talk about the efficiency of government, the honesty of government, that's a whole other issue.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the depth that you kind of went into to let us know what not only what you've identified perhaps as challenges, but solutions you've considered that you would bring to the table as you represent constituents in the legislature. So I like solutions-oriented people. That was fantastic. Thank you. So you did touch a little bit on affordable housing, and as we know, there have been a lot of studies and articles written on affordable housing and housing affordability, and you kind of touched on both of those. Well, I'd love to dig into one specific thing that you didn't touch on, and that is zoning. In 2021, the legislature passed a law that requires cities to adopt new zoning ordinances to allow for accessory dwelling units or ADUs. Through this zoning, cities are charged with determining where and how ADUs exist. How would you support the effort to address both affordable housing and housing affordability?
I think the ADUs is a slippery deal. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I know there's a home that they had one home on the lot. Somehow they got a permit to do another small home, a prefab home, and they were going to tear down the other home. That was 20 years ago. There's 2 homes on that lot now. So I think ideas like that are good. I think it's a local thing. I don't know if the state needs to be running that. I think Mill Creek City could do as good a job or better. And so I'm very concerned about how that is run. You know, you talk about not in my neighborhood. And I agree with that. That's a tough issue. I think affordable housing, it can be built more efficiently, but not much more. When you talk about the cost of providing the minimums, putting the building up is one thing, managing it is another thing, and many of them are very poorly managed. And I think you have to be careful about that. You have to have responsible people in there, and if they're not going to be responsible, it's going to be expensive. So I like the federal low-income housing tax program. It's a competitive based thing. So that's on affordable housing. I think that's a real good way to go. I think the opportunity zone program is good, although I haven't had a chance to do a project in that. I have done some federal low-income housing tax credit problems, and they're very competitive right now. So, and that's always good when you get the builders competing with each other. So that's on the affordable housing end of it. Housing affordability, again, inflation is caused by government. And they cause it by increasing money supply in those items, but administrative and those costs are very expensive. I think we need to really control that. I know we need to be regulated. You have to be regulated. I look at Park City and it's very expensive to build there. It's a beautiful area. Then we drive back, then we drive through there to Afton, Wyoming, and we go through Evanston. There are 2 opposite ends of that spectrum. The little control, as little control as you can have, and as much as control as you can have. Somewhere in the middle, it has to be a workable program. So again, I think affordability of the housing itself can be controlled by the builders and developers, but they're a small part of that percentage of cost. So I think we need to be innovative. We need to work with municipalities and try to find solutions together. And we are. I think Utah does a great job of that. So
Thank you for that one.
mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about something a little different, and let's talk about the role of the state legislature as it navigates decision-making with kind of local subdivisions, political subdivisions. So as you know, recently the legislature overturned a Salt Lake County mask mandate. That decision received both praise and criticism. What do you believe the role of the state legislature should be regarding its political subdivisions, such as Salt Lake County?
Yeah, I think the counties and the all municipalities must have the majority of the control. I think the closer the control is to the people, the better it is. And I don't mind the state coming in there, but we go back to the federal, and you go to the mandates, the mask mandates. They were given false information or had false information or developed it inaccurately, and we paid for it. And our school children paid for that with masks. You can argue all night whether masks are good or not, and you just have to research that on your own. Wear a mask as much as you want, but to force people to wear them and to put mandates on them that punish them and punish our children, I think is just not the right way to go. And the states can go in and issue guidance, but I think the local entities should be able to control. School boards need to be responsible to the citizens, and the cities like Mill Creek City, they're very responsive. They listen to us, and whether it's a state or a county or a city or a school board, they pay attention when you tell them you're a voter, and you'll be holding them accountable. So I'd like to see less state and more local.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
So let's shift a little bit to social media and just talk just a bit about an article that the Salt Lake Tribune published in May. And it attempted to scandalize the social media activities of several Republican lawmakers. What are your thoughts on the constant media attacks on anything conservative in the state? And as a member of the State House, how would you work with the media to ensure equal representation in the press for conservative values and principles?
I agree that that is a problem. They are targeting the conservatives. Freedom of the press is a right, right or wrong, it's there. And inaccurate reporting needs to be called out. I love the Republican platform. It's something that we should publish and be proud of to talk about. Our voice can be heard if we speak up. But if we're not speaking up, we may be on the right side of the issues. But if we're not defending our position, it's very difficult to get anything out. You don't hear anything. It's a conundrum. It's circular. But we need to be able to articulate to our neighbors, our friends, those around us, our platform, the Republican platform, whenever we have an opportunity. I've talked to some neighbors who are independents, and it's interesting. They say they're registered as Republicans, but they're more independent. I say, well, so will you put up a sign for me? Interestingly, and this is just an aside, I had two of the wives of the two friends I asked to put them up. They said no. Their wife says, yeah, we'll take two, please. And so you don't want to get too involved in the politics of it, but especially now, we need to voice our opinions. The other side is voicing it very effectively. And I think we need to fight that as much as we can, speak our minds, don't be afraid to say what we believe, and speak it loud and clear.
I appreciate that. And I think that's likely what drives many people like you to kind of throw your hat in the ring and get engaged and run for office. It's daunting. I'm an elected official. I'm on the Sandy City Council, and it is hard work.
That's tough.
But something drives you to do that. Whatever race you might decide to enter, I agree. It's because you feel like you need an opportunity to share your core values and provide examples of how you will make decisions with those values in mind. So I love everything you just shared. We all have a voice. I just finished reading, well, I've read 2 of Nikki Haley's books. Her most recent one was just released. It is fantastic. And it's like what you just said. It's use your voice, whatever your sphere of influence might be, have the courage and use your voice. So I love what you just shared. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm checking our time here. I did just check in on our YouTube comments. Just one final reminder for our viewers, if you have any questions for Gerald, please use the comment section of our YouTube streaming or of our Facebook streaming and let us know what questions you'd like him to answer. So I did another check. I don't see anything coming in. They must feel like you're hitting on everything they want to hear tonight. So I've got a couple more questions for you. We'll see. I'll ask one of them. We'll see how much time is left. We may not have time for the other. And then I do want to give you time to kind of wrap up and share your kind of parting remarks with all of us. So growth, we focused mostly on housing so far and the struggles we're facing there, but let's talk broader, a little bit more about growth. It is clearly a significant challenge in Utah. As a member of the State House, how will you work with others to seek effective solutions for the challenges we are experiencing due to growth?
You have to listen. You have to find out the problems, and you have to listen. I think our environmental effects from the gondola or the gravel pit or whatever it may be that's coming up, water, it's a huge issue. Those issues are going to be difficult to tackle. So we have to be able to talk about those in an educated manner. And we have to listen to our constituency, and we have to find out and listen to both sides and then make the best decisions we can. I still think on the like the gravel pit and the gondola, local citizens need to have a lot of say in these things. We need to be very, I shouldn't say this too loudly, but we need to be very suspicious of what our government and what lobbyists and others who have vested interests in these projects are doing. Where's the money coming from? Who's going to pay for it? How is it going to be paid back? What are the environmental impacts of it? And we got time. We've got time on these things. Maybe not the water, but we're well ahead of the water situation. So we're okay on that. I think the municipalities I think they're working hard on that. We need to have I don't think we need to have mandates, but we need to have incentives, and we need to develop those so people will use them and want to use them. Just for example, on the parks and the gondola, maybe we need fees. Maybe we need alternate days. Maybe we need to have fees on cars that go up. If you want to put 20 people in the car, good, better have 20 seatbelts. So I think we need to be careful of what we do and how we listen to our elected officials, and those officials like Trax and Front Runner, make sure we hold their feet to the fire and we get every question answered before moving forward on. We got time.
Thank you for that. We have time for one more question, and then we'll go into your wrap up. What are your ideas for improving election integrity?
Well, election integrity, I've listened to a couple of videos on it. I think the best thing we can do is be very informed on it. There's any number of people who have done findings on it. You got 2000 Mules, you got True the Vote, you got Mike Lindell, Seth Keshel. All of the analysis has been done on this. And I really don't like the Dominion system. I don't like the ERIC system. I don't like internet connections. I don't like foreign or tech interference that happens on these. I think we need to have same-day voting and paper ballots. It's not hard to do. France does it. You can count 40 million votes in a day. We don't need to have the interference. It's just a gamble. And I vote by mail. I trust Utah, but I don't know how that's going to play out in future years. So I'd be perfectly willing to go back to the paper ballots. And then one thing I think we need to do is volunteers, poll workers, poll watchers, get involved.
I hear a theme throughout all of your responses, Gerald, and that is get involved.
Yeah.
Well, actually, two themes: get involved and get educated. Which the educated comes with the involvement, right? So the more you're involved, the more you understand the issues, the more you, et cetera. So thank you for that. It's kind of like if you give a mouse a cookie. I don't know if you read that book to your kids or grandkids, like it's this circular thing. If you give a mouse a cookie. So if you get involved, you get educated, you're more informed,
Yeah.
So I appreciate that little theme that I heard running through all of your responses tonight. So thank you so much again for joining us. We've got about a minute left. I just want to turn the time over to you. What final thoughts do you have to share with those who are watching?
Well, you always have these little spiels written up, but what I'd like to do is, if you want to get involved, you want to be educated, one of the best sources I found is the Hillsdale College online courses. They're free. They're awesome. And they have a recent one on being a citizen, and any other news outlet. I'm just looking for an article I wanted to mention. Another one I think that would be good to listen to. We're raising the next generation. They're our kids, And I think one of the best things that is to understand is, what are the challenges for our children? How are we arming them to take over the future? And where are we missing things? One of the best things I listened to and read was an article on the American Conservative. Here I go again, pushing another article, but it's called Forgetting How to Be a Citizen, to be a Civilization, excuse me. Just go to that link. I'll have it up on my website, geraldburtutah.com. But if we can just get ourselves aware, not complacent, and involved, we'll get it back. We'll get it back. And I want to thank you again so much for your time. This has been a real opportunity and privilege for me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you, those who've been viewing online via YouTube or Facebook. We appreciate your time, Gerald. We appreciate the time those will spend watching your remarks. And we're gonna, together say, get involved.
Right.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, we are gonna kind of pivot into our next town hall this evening. Hi, Belinda.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Welcome. I'm glad we can see and hear each other. So I think all is well. Fantastic.
I was going to say the same thing.
Oh, no.
But it all just worked.
Did it work? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump right in to the town hall, I am going to kind of just do a quick introduction, touch base with our viewers, because this is being recorded and will be available on our Salt Lake County website. So for those who might not be joining us live, but might tune in later, we want to make sure we have all of that introduction taken care of at the start of this town hall. So let me get to my notes here. I just want to take the time to welcome again all of you who joined us for tonight's town hall. We appreciate you setting aside some time and joining us, whether you're watching live or setting aside time later to watch the recording. My name is Marcy Hausman. I am serving as our host this evening. Before I introduce our candidate for this town hall, I want to remind you that we are monitoring the YouTube chat as well as our Facebook chat, as we are streaming on both of those platforms. So as we proceed with the town hall, if you have any questions for Belinda, please use the comment feature of that platform, submit your questions, and I will be happy to pass those on. Tonight is just about having a nice conversation and giving Belinda ample opportunity to share what's important to her. I also want to make a note that this event, this town hall tonight, is only possible because of the support we've received through donations to our county party. So we appreciate those who've supported these events in the past. We encourage you, if you've not yet supported or donated to the county party, please do so. You can do that at our website, saltlakecounty.gop.com, which is SLCo.gop.com. So please take some time to go visit the website, make a donation so that we can continue to offer these town halls. And finally, if you are joining virtually, we ask you to remember to subscribe and also click on the notification bell so that you will hear about future events, future town halls, future opportunities to hear from candidates and those who represent you in Salt Lake County. So with that introduction, I told you a little bit about who we are and who I am, I should say. Let's hear now from Belinda Johnson, who is our candidate this evening for State House 35. Belinda, before we jump right into questions, just take as much time as you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running, and then we'll go into questions.
Okay, perfect. Belinda Johnson. I guess I should start with saying I'm a mom of two great young adults. And so they are awesome kids one's graduating from USU in a month or so. And the other one's gone back to school again to decide what he wants to do. But all is well. And we're having a first grandbaby in March. And so life is exciting over here.
Yay.
But I think that I say that because that gives me an introduction of why I am passionate about kids. My son, when he was small, had a speech delay and a hearing problem. And that got us really involved in the schools early on. He was able to have some services through Jordan School District. And then we moved to St. George, and his services absolutely got dropped. And then we moved back, we moved to Murray. We rode out 2008 in the car business and had a new home in St. George. We rode that out, and we came back here and fell into Murray accidentally, and they just picked him right up and did remarkable things for him with their the resources they had in Murray School District. So that made me be a mama bear and start, really being involved. And so I started off in PTA, community councils, and then I was asked if I would run for the school board in Murray City School District. And that was 12 years ago. I've ran 3 times and been elected each time, 2 times once against an incumbent, once somebody else ran against me, and once unopposed. And so a lot of people say, you've already done this. And I say, oh no, the House race is much bigger than the school board race. The school board race is your neighbors and your friends. So that's kind of how I got to where I was at, except for I guess I should include the reason I moved away from school board, because this will wind up my term will be January 1st, is I was kind of feeling a little bit like it should be somebody else's turn. I do believe that we have a time and a place when we're really connected to our community. But I was also feeling like I'd learned a lot on school board, and what could I do with that knowledge, and where could I use it to still serve my community? And some neighbors said, hey, the incumbent has been in for almost 20 years. And his neighbors don't even know who he is. So maybe you could do that, and kind of blew it off. And then a couple months later, revisited it. And I just really would still like the opportunity to take what I've learned as a school board member and as a parent and as a small business owner, and just be able to be at the table and have good legislation for families and for students. Kids are my thing. I love teenagers. That's my passion. And I just want to make sure we're making good decisions for them and their future.
Oh, what a great introduction. I love it. I wish I lived in Murray.
That's very nice.
I love Sandy. I'm on the Sandy City Council, so don't tell anyone I said that, because I do love Sandy.
Right.
But I loved your story, because I think often when we get involved, we can point back to someone or some group of some people who tapped us on the shoulder, figuratively, and saw something that, hey, have you thought about? And look where it's taken you. People who saw your leadership and recognized your ability to make good things happen for your community. So I love that. I love that story. Thank you so much for that intro. So let's jump right into some questions that we've got planned here, and then I'll keep an eye on the YouTube, see if there's any comments in there to pull in some questions from our viewers.
Perfect.
All right. So you've already actually answered in your introduction. You've already answered a couple of things we've got here for you. But let me circle back to something you said as part of your introduction, and that is how important children, teenagers, families are to you. And so in your role as school board, obviously that was at the heart of the work. And that sounds like it's also what's driving you to move into the House. So talk a little bit about bills that you've observed, you've watched, perhaps you've even gotten involved with, and bills that you would like to support and help move through the House if you were to be elected. Either side, talk about whichever, but specifically bills that support families in Utah. Okay.
I'd love to talk about some bills, but I'd also like to talk about some policies that I've been involved in. I just have to give a shout out to school board members, because it has been a hard 2 or 3 years. But we in Murray are working really hard on the Sensitive Materials Act that came in a House bill last year. And we know it's important. And we are probably getting beat up a lot that we don't care. And I just want people to know that school board members, and I'm sure our representatives in the legislature, take these things seriously. There's sleepless nights. There's lots of consideration. And it is hard to make decisions when you have a school district I have 45,000 people in my voting area, a wide variety of people. And so it's important to listen and to try to do what's best for the majority, I guess you could say, but really just not get really hung up on the extremes. So that sensitive materials bill was a big bill for me because it is affecting me still every school board meeting and every thought. One of the things that I do worry about is legislation that repeats what our administrators are already doing. We sometimes get bills that are unfunded and their mandates that say, hey, gather this information and then report it in a report. And there's a lot of times when our administrators are already doing that same thing in another report. I do love the work. Susan Pulsifer works really hard on bills that say, hey, wait, let's just do one report that brings all this information, because they get really bogged down. Even just the lands trust plans and safe school plans are a lot of work. I'm not saying they shouldn't be reported. I'm saying let's just make sure we condense things and not repeat things and not add on. Something I do feel strongly about, kind of controversial, that was in legislation last year. I do feel strongly about women's sports in Title IX, and that we should protect girls and all that they have fought for the last 50 plus years, and their rights to be safe and not have biological men take the podium and take the medals from them. And I've taken some heat on that. And I will take the heat on that, because I just feel strongly that these girls, they were still not caught up with the boys' sports, and we've got work to do. I'm also a member of the board of trustees for the Utah High School Activity Association. And so that's kind of where my policies come. I'm proud of the decisions that I've made there. I was part of the women's wrestling inaugural committee. And I'm so proud of those girls, and that they're out wrestling and they're doing so well at the sport, and it's growing. And that's just something I'm passionate about. I never was an athlete myself, but I had siblings that were athletes, and I got dragged all over the state for sports. So I feel strongly about supporting those girls and those women in those sports. I do think one of the policies on a local level that not one of the policies, but we've worked really hard at transparency in Murray School District. We are probably over transparent sometimes. I have parents who tell me, stop sending me Canvas reminders. I have 4 kids. They have 7 classes each. I can't keep up. But we're trying to be overly transparent. And I'm really proud of the work we've done. Just last week, we had to approve our behavior, just our behavior plans. And we said, hey, let's put these lists on the website. And our great school district said, absolutely, let's put them, because parents should be informed, parents should know. And how do you know where to find that information? So let's just put it on the website so it's all there. And I'm proud of my work there. And that's the type of things I'd like to continue doing in the House of Representatives. It's just look for good solutions. And hey, just put things out there for people to see. Let's talk about it. And there's nothing to hide. If there's something to hide, there's a problem.
I so appreciate just your commitment to being like very clear about what drives you. These are my values. This is why they are my values. And I will continue pushing forward in policy and legislation that aligns to those values. And just personally, I want to thank you for the advocacy I heard from you for administrators. I'm a former school turnaround leader. I was the principal of a Title I school, and I know the importance of accountability and reporting. I also know the importance of being in the classroom and connecting with students and supporting instruction that's happening in the classroom, and being very visible. And so as we streamline what we're asking administrators to do while still measuring, we're giving them back the time where the magic happens, which is be in the classrooms, observe instruction, provide, coaching and feedback as needed, and just elevate what's happening in our classroom. So thank you so much for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's kind of talk about something that is hurting families. I know you talked policy. Let's talk a little bit about inflation. It is definitely hurting Utah families. What would you do as a member of the state legislature to address inflation?
Yeah, inflation's definitely hurting everybody. We are, as a family, in the insurance industry, and one of the groups that it's hurting everybody, but we hear a lot from our seniors who say, that $3 or $5 a month increase in my insurance, I'm on such a fixed income that really hurts. And I do worry about that group. And I've actually, because Murray is an aging community, I've heard from them a lot. And I learned a long time ago, you don't make campaign promises, because it is always more complicated and more difficult than until you're in office. But I do like the idea of looking at some maybe property tax pauses for our 75 and older group. And that might not be popular, but I think things like that are worth a look at in a discussion. I was watching your program and I heard Judy Weeks talk about the food tax and how it was a temporary fix. I loved her ideas that we get rid of the food tax, because would be a big savings on small family or young families and families when they would go to the store. So I think that would be something to look at. I also think we need to hold the federal government responsible. This is their mess. They flooded our markets with all this stimulus money, and we've kept our interest rates too low for too long. And now we're just seeing this huge rise. I have, like I said, young adult children, and I can't go down the rabbit hole because it makes me just too crazy thinking, will they be able to buy houses? How are they affording gas? My son-in-law commutes, and I think, gas money, it's got to be hurting him. And so I think that going back, we need to hold our federal officials accountable and keep pushing back about oil reserves and about our pipelines and being energy independent, because that doesn't solve inflation, but that might ease some of the burdens that we are all facing every day and hurting. And it's such a circle, because I understand your utilities are having to raise their prices because their costs are more. And so it's hitting every area of our lives. And that is going to be difficult and hard to slow down. I don't think throwing more money at it is the answer. And I'm not in favor of forgiving student debt. We're just passing the problem along to our next group of kids. And I think there's kids like my own and others who've paid their way through school one way or the other. And that was their choice and that was your choice. But inflation it's hurting everybody. And I don't know, there's no magic answer.
But the cumulative effect, it sounds like you're interested in really understanding what are the little things that can be done so that the cumulative effect of those policy decisions hopefully starts to alleviate inflation in some way. Thank you for that. Let's talk about zoning, a very specific concept, or I should say policy that the state legislature has been looking at. We know the challenges that are coming our way in the state of Utah through growth. Let's narrow that, and then later we can talk on a broader scale about those challenges, but specifically housing. So one of the things the legislature has done is pass a law requiring cities to adopt new zoning ordinances, and these ordinances allow for accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. Through this zoning, cities are charged with determining where and how ADUs exist. What are your thoughts on supporting the effort to address both affordable housing and housing affordability, which are two different things?
Right. And I will say this, my expertise is not in this area. How about that? But I do know ADUs because it's affected our neighborhood. I do think they are in the right place being in local control. I think the closer you are to where things are happening, the more you know the situation. And so here in Murray, making decisions for Murray dwellings to add that ADU, that's the best place for that decision to be made. We've had one in our own neighborhood that got told no. They wanted to make a house into 4 units, but it was because of parking. They got told no. There was plenty of room in the house, and I actually saw the plans, and it was quite ingenious how they were going to do it, but the parking would have been horrible. And so they told them no, and I think that is okay. But I do kind of like the idea, because that gives families, again, a little relief if they can have even a parent or a grandparent that lives in the home in a mother-in-law apartment or a secondary apartment or renters. And so I don't think it's something we should write off as a bad idea. I just think we need to do it carefully at a local level. As far as housing affordability, we do meet often as school board with our city council, and we just keep getting told that that's what we're building. We're building affordable housing. We're building affordable housing. It's not affordable. One of our employees, she's looking for her first apartment or home outside of her parents' house. And she told us that a room was going to be $1,200. And I pay her paycheck. And I know, and she said to have a little 2-bedroom, not even nice, was going to be $1,800. And I know how much she makes, and I know how hard she works, and that's just an impossibility. So that's a frustration to me, that we're deeming it as affordable housing, but it's not. And I do think that also comes to federal funding that's being pushed upon us. One of the things I really worry about the high density housing is that it tends to, you put that many people together in a small place, there's going to be more crime. There's no way to go blow off steam. There's nowhere to say, hey, I'm going for a walk. And an example in our Murray area is I'm in a neighborhood. I adore my little elementary school. It's a Title I school, and it means the world to my family, but it is very transient. And we were trying to figure out why we were having fighting amongst these 2 groups of kids. Day in and day out, they'd fight. Well, that was when we dug into it. They had dropped 2 tribes from Africa in one apartment building who have been mortal enemies for hundreds of years. Their grandparents hate each other, their parents, it is taught them every day. And we're saying, hey, go to school and be friends on the playground. That's the kind of thing you kind of find when we push these people into these, high density housing. And so that's a worry for me. One of the other things I worry is there's a misnomer out there that says that young adults don't want their own homes. They want to live in apartments. I say that's completely bogus. Young adults want their own little piece of land too. And so I am interested in the ideas of mixed use land, where we have entry-level homes and some small apartment buildings, townhomes, small homes, and some bigger homes, where we don't take every spot like we have. In Murray, we build 2 things. We build $1 million plus homes or apartment buildings. Where's the in-between? I mean, and so that is something that's very much on my mind, but I don't know that I know. I'm not enough of an expert to really speak on the specifics of it, but I do worry about, we have neighbors who are in a 55 and older trailer community, and they purposely moved there as retirees because it was affordable, and they can't afford it anymore. So we really need to look at, I did listen to your last guest, and he was talking about foreign entities buying up land and homes, and let's look and make sure we're making sure our kids, our citizens are who are getting first choice of these homes, and that we are helping them get into them.
Well, for someone who started out saying, this is not my area, you sure know a lot about the challenges and some potential solutions. So you're not giving yourself enough credit, Belinda.
Thank you. I don't know, but thank you.
No, I think what you're describing, I've read a lot of articles about this, and Wasatch Front Regional Council has definitely put out a lot of information about the missing middle. And that's the phrase that I continue to hear that aligns with what you just described, is those who home ownership is a desire, but there is nothing in the middle for them to get into that first home, or the retirees, like you just mentioned, who know they want to downsize because they don't need the big house anymore, but there's nothing to move into. So the missing middle is a significant challenge in Utah, and I applaud your efforts to look into solutions for that. So thank you. All right, I am checking our comment section here. I do not see any questions from our viewers. So I'm just going to kind of keep rolling through the questions we have here. I'll keep an eye on the time, make sure we don't go over. Let's turn our attention a little bit to social media. And on May 25th, the Salt Lake Tribune published an article that attempted to scandalize the social media activities of several Republican lawmakers. What are your thoughts about media attacks on everything conservative in Utah? And as a member of the State House, how would you work with the media to ensure equal representation in the press for conservative values and principles?
Great. That is actually a question that I have some personal experience with. I have for years had a Facebook page, and then as long as I've been a school board member, I've had a re-election page. I only use it in re-election years, so I flipped it over and used it for this re-election. And I have been kicked off Facebook twice because I've got content that is inappropriate. I can't help but believe it's because I was a conservative person, because I know none of my content was inappropriate. So I hadn't even mentioned my opponent's name on my Facebook page. So that just leads me to believe that I'm in the middle. My son says you got zucked. And I'm like, I think so. So it's frustrating. And I think that the media has really become social activists one way or the other. And how do you stay relevant and out of that? And I will say it probably sounds like kind of a pie in the sky, pretty idea, but in schools and in school districts, we talk a lot about telling our story. We have to tell our story so that people know the good that's going on, the things that are changing, the things that are moving forward. And maybe as conservatives, we need to do a better job at telling our story. And maybe we need to have, find alternate places where we can share it. Maybe it is in person, maybe it's on our own social media. Maybe you join other things, Rumble and these other kind of parallel social media sources. But just maybe we just are always like we have the journals, you know, they're always looking for pieces. Let's tell them like what's good going on, what good we're doing as legislators or as leaders or as government, or let's just say good things that are going on in our communities. I get a little frustrated because I know there's a lot of challenges in our schools and with our kids. But I tell you what, we have amazing youth. We have amazing young people. And let's tell their story and tell why they are good leaders, why they're good Republicans or whatever it is, good conservative people, and how they love their country and how they love the things that they're involved in that are positive. But I think we need to be better about telling our story. And maybe if we just kind of beat the drum until maybe we get listened to. I do think it's an uphill battle. It's really extreme on either side. If you listen to news sources, I've actually said to my husband, and I found a few, I just want somewhere that I can find the facts. I don't want somebody's spin on it. I just want the facts. And that's hard to find right now. So tell our story, tell all the good that's going on.
I 100% agree. And I love everything you just shared. I've committed to doing that so I'm on the Sandy City Council. And I just feel like my responsibility as an elected official is here are the facts. Here are the facts.
Yeah.
And so as we push out the facts, it helps people who choose to engage become more informed. And so you're right. If there's not enough outlets for finding the facts, then people may not get as informed as we would like them to be. So thank you for that advocacy. We are like any more questions, I give you time to kind of provide your wrap-up statement. What would you like people to know as we end our town hall tonight?
So I just want people to know that I can't say enough how much I support kids and I support families. And I feel like families are under attack and we need to do all we can to strengthen families and strengthen kids, whether that's from the government level or from in our homes. We need constant vigilance to make sure we're caring for kids and giving them the future that they need. One of the things I do feel strongly that we didn't go over is in that making a path to their future. I really would like to work on legislation. I guess I should have mentioned that in that question, where we move from secondary schools to our post-secondary school to the workforce. Let's get our own kids in Utah ready to be the workforce instead of bringing in people from all over the country. Let's make sure our kids are the first on the list when all the companies down at Point of the Mountain want a list of people. Let's make sure it's our kids that are ready to go. I'd love to be the point where Murray High was like, and we're doing some partnerships with them. I love it, where they're IMC's first choice because they know our kids are ready to go to work and to do what they need to do. So I love things like that. I just think that's the opportunities I would like to look for and strengthen. And I just would like to sit at the table to say, hey, what about this? Or let's think about this. Let's ask questions. I sometimes think as a school board member, well, I know as a school, I've been criticized for not asking enough questions in a board meeting. And I tend to not put people on the spot. I like to have discussions outside of chambers and really get into it with people and say, hey, let's talk this through and let's ask a lot of questions. And I would like to continue to do that, is asking questions and looking for solutions for families. And more about me is on my website. It's voteforbelinda.com with the number 4. You still can get to my social media election page on Facebook, ironically. Everything else is shut down. But and I know I have a lot to learn and I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to serve.
Thank you so much, Belinda. I appreciate your passion. You're clearly driven to make positive change in their community and at all levels. So I just so appreciate all that you have done in your service on the school board, all that you will do, because we are believing in you and we're cheering you on. All that you will do in the House, you'll bring all that you've learned with you and continue to serve. So thank you for your time tonight. Thank you to those who've joined us, have been watching virtually, or will be watching this recording at another time. We appreciate your time and listening to Belinda. And like you heard, go visit her website to learn more. Thanks again, Belinda, and have a great night.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we are going to transition. Excuse me. We are going to transition to our final town hall of the evening. We are waiting for our candidate, Brittany, to join. Hi, Brittany.
Hi.
So glad to see you, and you can hear me and everything's good?
Yes, and you can hear me?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Before I turn some time over to you to introduce yourself, I am going to kind of do a little bit of an introduction at the start of this town hall. We are recording each of our town halls this evening, and we'll be posting them so that viewers who are not able to join us tonight will be able to watch at any time that works for them. So I'm just going to kind of do our little introduction, and then I'll jump right into allowing you to introduce yourself and tell our viewers a little bit about you. So for those of you joining us tonight, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening, or if you're watching this at a later time, whatever time of day you happen to be watching this recording, we appreciate your time. I'm Marcy Hausman. I'll be hosting tonight's town hall. This is the 4th in our series of town halls this evening. So we really appreciate you setting aside some time to watch. We are going to welcome those of you who are joining from our YouTube streaming or from Facebook, and invite you to please add some comments to some questions, I should say, to the comment section. We want to make sure that we give, excuse me, sorry, I've been talking a little too much tonight. give Brittany a chance to hear from you and respond to the questions that you might have for her. So I will be monitoring our YouTube comment stream as well as Facebook. So do as we go, please feel free to add comments there so that I can bring them into the conversation. Tonight is really meant to just be a conversation between you and I, Brittany, and I will work hard to integrate questions that might come in through our YouTube streaming. But before we jump in, one kind of final plug here. For those who are joining, we want to express appreciation to all who have donated to our county party. Those contributions are what make events like this town hall possible. So thank you for those who've donated. If you've not yet had a chance to do so, we do invite you to visit our county website at saltlakecountygop.com, and that's SLCogop.com, and make a donation. All of those donations go towards allowing us to make these events happen, give candidates an opportunity to speak to voters and get their message out. So thank you again for those donations. And if you are viewing on YouTube, Facebook, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you get alerts about our future events, which will be made possible by those donations that we just talked about. All right, so with that, Brittany, welcome again. You are running for House District 32, so invite you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why are you running?
Yeah, so my name is Brittany Karzan. I live in South Salt Lake, and House District 32 includes most of South Salt Lake, some of West Mill Creek, and then a little bit of Sugar House as well. So it's a 3-deal group. And the reason I jumped in, I just was tired of communities like mine who don't really have a voice anywhere. We've not had real representation for our community in a really long time. Nobody really advocates for us, yet we are an essential part of the county and the state. We're home to the jail, the Men's Homeless Resource Center, the Youth Detention Center, the Youth Receiving Center, and they are building the Mental Health Receiving Center in South Salt Lake, not just in my district. And there are not adequate resources to address those needs. As a South Salt Lake resident, I subsidize those tax dollars to pay for the needs of those facilities. And those are things that I just was like, I think this is wrong, so I'll give this a try. But yes, so that's why I'm running. A little more about me. In my day job, I am the Director of Communications for the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. I've spent the last 4 years working in different capacities with law enforcement agencies, working on policy mainly, and that has been a fascinating experience. Before that, I worked for the health department. I ran the state's anti-tobacco media campaign. Before that, I worked for a power company, and I got a couple degrees in the middle of all of that, and that's me.
That's fantastic. I think it's always good for voters to hear the breadth of experience that anyone is bringing to an office. And so hitting on all of those, I think is really valuable. So thank you for that. You also reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. And I heard this quote, sadly, at the funeral for Major/Mayor Brent Taylor. And he lived by this quote, and I have adopted it ever since hearing it at his funeral. And I think you would relate. The quote is essentially, you can wring your hands or you can roll up your sleeves, but you can't do both. And it's become one of my favorite. And that's what I hear you saying is you saw some things and it kind of bothered you. And instead of, kind of just sitting back complaining about it, you decided to roll up your sleeves and jump in and get to work. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. All right, so we're going to jump into some questions we've got. You actually kind of hit a couple of things that I have got here on the list. So we're going to skip over those and jump into protecting families. So if you could, please talk a little bit about bills that you have followed in the legislature, or bills that you would be interested in. You mentioned policy work that you've done. What policy work would you be interested in doing as a state representative in the House, specifically around protecting families?
Yeah, so I a lot of what I've done is law enforcement, so not necessarily like directly related to families. But one thing that I've learned through working with those law enforcement pieces is that so many of the folks who end up in our systems, in our criminal justice system, come from families that are not whole, right? They have, whether it's, a single parent household, whether it's a household with somebody who's experiencing addiction or a mental illness, we have really broken families in our communities. And too often those broken families, the kids that come from them are the ones who end up, becoming offenders. And it really is something that we can fix, right? Like there is an maybe not easy. It's a simple solution in the sense that you're like, we know what people need. And it's a matter of being able to help get that to them, to be a community, they say it takes a village to raise a kid. And I think that when we look at the criminal justice system from that perspective, it really does. And I think we've failed as a community. I think we've failed to actually like step in and try to help out people who are in situations that are just truly unfortunate. So in terms of protecting families, I am about less legislation and more doing. I don't think we need things in policy because I do actually think that complicates things. There are some things you need in policy, but overall, I think most of that is supporting funding going into the right places, supporting funding for various agencies who actually have a chance to work with people and divert them from the system. Anything that we can invest early, even if we can divert 10% of those who would end up in the criminal justice system by investing today, it is going to save us so much money in the long run because incarceration is incredibly expensive. And it's also the morally right thing to do. So it's kind of, we get to feel good about it. And it really is the best tax policy. So I really think that it is time for us to take a very hard look at those families that are struggling and those families that need assistance and figure out how as a community we can step in and support them.
Thank you, Brittany. So I've served in, my profession is education, and I've served as principal of a Title I school in the work of turnaround and school improvement. And I've often talked about the ecosystem and that education cannot on their own fix all of the challenges. And that's what I hear you saying. It's an ecosystem. And as we work to unpack what I call the upstream challenges, which are what you just described, as the ecosystem comes together to address those upstream challenges, all of a sudden teachers and principals get to return to a focus on high quality instruction and really getting back to what they are good at, because the ecosystem has stepped in and worked together to address those challenges so that students can come in and get busy learning.
Yeah, and I've had a wonderful opportunity in the sheriff's office. Sheriff Rivera has assigned me to really help kind of on some of these initiatives. And so we've actually convened groups of stakeholders that have never actually worked together, which boggles my mind. And the fact that law enforcement is the convening agency also boggles my mind. But we see that problem at the end and we can see where it needs to get fixed upstream. And so being able to be a partner in all of those things has been really, really exciting. Part of that work, we actually just secured a federal grant for Magna, not this community, for $2 million. So, that's the professional piece, but those are a lot of the things that I like we need to bring that into my community, and we need to do that for all of our communities, because at the end of the day, when people offend in Magna, they're going to get dropped off in my community, which is the human warehouse.
Oh, never heard that term, but I appreciate that. That's a great insight. Thank you, Brittany. Let's talk a little bit about inflation. So we talked, your ideas on protecting families. One of the things that's hurting families in Utah, obviously, is inflation. What would you do as a member of the state legislature to address inflation?
Monetary policy is not my expertise, so I'm going to go find the smartest person who can tell me what I need to do, and that's what I'm going to do. I know what I don't know, and I know what I do know, and I'm going to stick in my lane when those things happen. I think in terms of principally, we need to do whatever it is that we can that is going to create a long-term and sustainable solution. Creating temporary relief that is going to cause us problems in the long term is really not an option I support. I think it's really about figuring out what those real solutions are, even if it's going to take us a few years to see the benefits.
Well, we are the party of Lincoln, and that's exactly what Lincoln did. He surrounded himself with with people who he knew were experts in certain things, and his leadership shined brightly because he brought people together, studied, learned from them, and then ultimately made really great decisions. So there you go. You're just following after Lincoln. Surround yourself with great people, learn from them, and then make great things happen.
It's the way to go.
Yes. Fantastic. So we've seen a lot of growth in Utah. With the growth come a lot of challenges. If there's time, we'll talk large scale, the breadth of those challenges. But for now, I'd like to kind of narrow our focus to housing and get your thoughts on what Utah is and or could be doing to address the housing challenges. For example, in 2021, the legislature passed a law requiring cities to adopt new zoning ordinances that allow for accessory dwelling units. That's one example of what the state has done to try to address both housing affordability and affordable housing, which are in some ways two different things. So talk a little bit about how you would support, as a member of the state legislature, how would you support efforts to address both affordable housing and housing affordability?
Well, I love this question because my community is one that we have an apartment complex or a townhome community going in on every possible nook and cranny. So we see that growth, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, we live in an urban area and that's great. But the issue becomes they're going to put in townhomes in South Salt Lake, which is the poorest city in Salt Lake County, that are going to be at a cost that our residents can't afford. And that is a problem. So here, as I've really dug into this issue, what I have found, and it's not an easy solution, but a simple solution, in that we have to change state law to allow cities to actually require that an allotment of those new units actually be low income or affordable housing. Currently, I think everyone's looking to their city to make that decision. Legally, the cities cannot require a developer to set aside 10% of their units as affordable. They can offer incentives, which is just more cost to your taxpayers, but they can't require that. And so instead of us making a very smart policy decision and a smart community decision, we're letting developers drive that conversation and make profit off of us poor taxpayers in the poorest city in Salt Lake County.
Thank you. So let's move on to social media and kind of the role social media plays in our political arena. On May 25th, the Salt Lake Tribune published an article in an attempt to scandalize social media activities of several Republican lawmakers. What are your thoughts about media attacks on those things that are conservative in our state? And as a member of the State House, how would you work with the media to ensure equal representation in the press for conservative values and principles?
So I think that really gets into some weird First Amendment issues. I like, at the core, working with law enforcement, I've grown to have a completely different appreciation for the Constitution than I did before, because I get to watch people who every day put their life on the line for that document, who take an oath that they are going to do whatever they can to protect and serve our communities. I watched, as did most of you, those people protect local elected officials who decided to take a knee in protest to their profession, with these officers standing by to ensure that they were safe. And because of that, I think that it should be a free speech. Government should not be involved in that. Now, can you put pressure on it? Sure. Can you talk about it? Absolutely. Should media be a lot more thoughtful about what they say? 100%. As a law enforcement agency, we definitely take the brunt of that. And yet I still don't think that we should be able to dictate what they say. I think that if people are concerned about how things are portrayed in the media, then we just need to be more thoughtful, because everything we do is watched, documented, put out there. And so we're just asking for it, right? So I don't know. Those are my thoughts around it. I think it's a super sticky situation. I think we come into lots of constitutional issues, and I don't think it actually solves the problem. It doesn't create a conversation. It doesn't allow us to actually really kind of be like, well, maybe we don't disagree. Maybe we actually do agree, but we're using different words that mean different things.
Good point. Good point. Looking for how to actually solve the problem by starting a productive conversation.
Yes. So I'm not really a politician, obviously, because that's what I want to do.
Well, I'm an elected official. I serve on the Sandy City Council, and I hope that I am about solving challenges and getting work done, so for what it's worth.
That was
I
a
think
very
there
broad
are-
generalization. I understand.
All is well. All right, let's talk about another aspect of growth that has been in the news quite a bit lately, and that is the growth that comes from those who move to or visit our state for tourism. So recently, UDOT released its recommendation for solving the transportation challenges in Little Cottonwood Canyon. What are your thoughts on that recommendation? And do you have you explored any policy options that you would use to address congestion in both of our Cottonwood Canyons?
And just to make sure, we're talking about the gondola. Okay.
Well,
Just making sure.
There's far more.
There's more than that. Yeah.
Put out than just the gondola, but yes.
Oh, my lights just dimmed. That's weird. So I think the gondola is a terrible idea and a terrible use of taxpayer dollars. I don't think it solves the problem. Working as part of the Sheriff's Office, Canyon Patrol, and Unified Police Department handle that. So I'm very familiar with the issues up there. I 100% support the toll. I think that it's crazy for us not to have that. One of the biggest issues that I am concerned about with that gondola piece is it really doesn't address the issues of people who are stopping in between the bottom and the top. And like, if you look at things like Donut Falls and some of those other really popular hiking trails, you're not going to alleviate that congestion with a gondola. So it would be fun and cool and pretty, but I don't think it's an effective use of taxpayer dollars. If private people wanted to do it, I think we could look at it from that perspective. But as somebody who pays a lot of tax dollars for things that really suck, I think this would go on that list for me. I really do think that toll would be really, really helpful, and a third lane would be really helpful. At least even when there's an accident, you could at least get around it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we've talked about a few narrow aspects of growth. Let's just talk more comprehensively. What other challenges do you see the state struggling with relevant to growth? And what thoughts do you have and would you bring to the legislature to address those?
Oh, this is a loaded question. Let's take in different segments. So South Salt Lake, and actually almost all of my district, has been an area that is been very welcoming to our refugee population. And we have a lot of refugee members of our community, which is awesome. It's part of the reason I live here. I love the diversity that we have, and I love getting to talk to different people and have different experiences and learn different things. But what we fail to do is actually help these people acclimate into our communities. And that failure, especially as we continue to welcome refugees, is just going to compound a lot of our social problems, where we need to take the time, we need to provide the resources, we need to help people learn English, we need to help parents understand how to navigate the systems here. Because ultimately, those failures cost us a lot of money in our tax dollars. And ultimately, a lot of times those folks end up doing really stupid things because they don't understand it's against the law here, and they end up in my community and my human warehouses. And you end up with a victim of something, which is awful, right? And so we've failed there. So I think we need to be really thoughtful. This is some low-hanging fruit. I also think as we look at this growth, especially from a crime perspective, we are seeing significant changes in our gang activity, and we are seeing a lot of that big city stuff come in. And if we don't actually take action now, we are going to end up with big city gang problems. I mean, we already have gang problems, but they're going to get worse. And I think that that is a failure of the community again, because we need to figure out what those interventions are. I don't know that they're all policy. There might be some funding, it might be some investment up front. But what we also fail to think about in either of these cases is that we're not just dealing with a perpetrator who gets warehoused in South Salt Lake. We're dealing with a victim. And basically any crime, it's like dropping a rock in the water and you see the ripple effects. And so we are going to affect generations of families and generations of people. And we're going to set them up for failures as victims who don't actually have access to services, or, because we all think that we're fine and we don't need help. Don't go get help. And it's just going to create so many more problems. It also is going to increase your costs to your taxpayers when we have to have more victim services. So I think it's really about doing some really smart things in relation to getting people acclimated to our communities and making some strategic public safety investments.
Thank you. I was just checking to see if we have had any questions come in from our YouTube stream, and I do not see any. I'm checking Facebook, so I'm going to keep moving through the questions that that I've got here. Let me just check one more time. No, I don't see any there either. So you must be just, proactively providing responses that mean they don't have any questions. So, all right, I will go ahead and jump to the next one. So, you mentioned your service in with the sheriff's department and some of your education experiences. Is there any other public service or military service or community service or voluntary service organizations that you would like to share with us this evening?
Yeah, I also worked in public health for a number of years, which was a really interesting learning experience. And I'm on the board of Comunidades Unidas, which is a group that serves our Latinx population. I worked with them from a health perspective, and it was one of those things where I don't know that we necessarily agree on all the things, but we agree on enough of the things, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve there. It is also really interesting to be parts of organizations where, you do have differences, and it's okay to have those. It's okay not to be 100% on board with everything. I've been in the junior league. I've done a lot of work with the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition, YWCA, a lot of other things too, probably, that I just show up and somehow end up getting involved.
Well, back to what we talked about earlier with the whole roll up your sleeves thing, you clearly see things and you want to get involved. So you roll up your sleeves and jump in. And those organizations, I am confident, are grateful to have you. They see Brittany coming and they're like, yes. So thank you. It's always helpful, I feel like, for constituents to see a side of you that's not necessarily a professional side, or perhaps your elected official side. Just shows kind of a little bit about who you are. So I have that question just to give you a chance to talk about the other aspects of who you are. All right, so one more question for tonight, and then I want to turn it over to your kind of closing wrap-up remarks. And our final question has to do with elections, and a lot of conversation that's being had around election integrity. What are your thoughts on election integrity and suggestions or ideas for improvement?
Again, not an area I'm an expert in and how to actually conduct an election. So I'm not going to go too far down that road of suggestions. But I think this in some ways goes back to the discussion around media. I think it goes back to that larger discussion of we should definitely be questioning everything, because government is government. And taking action based on that. I know that in that discussion, vote by mail has become under fire. As a millennial, I just would like to tell all of you non-millennials, if you go back, we're gonna have some real problems. I've showed up to the polls twice only because I decided to in my lifetime, right? Vote by mail has been the thing in my lifetime. And so I think that it's something that if that is an issue, we need to figure out how to fix it, because you're not getting rid of it. and we can look at whatever those changes need to be. And again, this is where experts can weigh in and tell me what needs to be done, because I don't know how to conduct an election. That's not my job, thankfully.
Have you had a chat with Gowd, who's running, for county clerk? Because he's got some ideas.
I know. I've talked with him briefly. Again, a lot of it, you're like, that's really interesting. And I don't have time to go read all the things to make a decision about what you have to say, because that's complicated.
But I would say, he's definitely got that expert. He's one you'd want around your table, right?
Yeah.
If you're Lincoln and you're building your cabinet.
I'll let him handle elections and I'll handle the law enforcement stuff.
There you go. Perfect. Well, Brittany, this has been delightful, and I so appreciate the time you spent with us tonight and giving constituents an opportunity to get to know you through this town hall. We have 1 minute left. What would you like to share with our viewers as we wrap up?
Again, my name is Brittany Karzan. I'm running in House District 32 because we've not had a voice for a very long time, and it's really unfortunate. South Salt Lake is the most dangerous city in the state of Utah. It is the poorest city in Salt Lake County. It is the second most diverse city in Salt Lake County, and it has the third highest tax rate in Salt Lake County. It is a community of like 28,000 people who have been divided up into 3 county council districts and 2 House districts. And while yes, there are other parts of my community that are in this district, if we actually fix things in South Salt Lake, it'll fix things for other communities. And it's time to make things fair for everybody. And so that's really why I'm running.
And that's your elevator pitch. When you have 30 seconds to tell someone, there you go. I didn't time it, but it felt like it was pretty close to an 30-second elevator speech. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you to our viewers who've joined us, whether you're watching live or you're watching this recording later. We really appreciate your time, and have a great night, Brittany. Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
All right, Chris.